You're fired. And don't think that's the end of it. Get ready. My boss said this to me at work. I tried to defend myself endlessly, but they dismissed my arguments, saying there was no evidence. I was accused of embezzling company funds and was fired without any chance to prove my innocence. I have no idea what to do now. With my mind completely blank, I packed my things and left the office. What am I supposed to do? I sat on a bench in front of the building, holding my head in despair. No money, no job. Actually, it's worse than having no money. I have a huge debt to pay off. As I sat there, lost on how to move forward, someone spoke to me. Is that you, Kevin? I looked up to see a beautiful woman about my age standing there. Emily, you need to pay for your school lunch. Mr. Johnson's angry voice echoed through the classroom. A thin girl was standing in front of Mr. Johnson. It must have been about 18 years ago, and I was around 9 years old. We were supposed to put our lunch money in an envelope and hand it to Mr. Johnson every month. Most of the students paid the required amount. But my classmate, Emily, was always being scolded for not paying her lunch money. Thinking back now, it wasn't Emily's fault she couldn't pay the lunch money, it was her parents. There was no point in blaming her, and she had no way to explain herself. I'm sorry. Emily apologized in a voice so small it was barely audible. What? I can't hear you. Mr. Johnson snapped back harshly, glaring at her. Emily shrank back, her shoulders trembling slightly. Given the times, Mr. Johnson probably wasn't just venting his stress. He likely felt a sense of duty to maintain authority among the students. Emily's getting scolded again. She's such a bad kid. Snickers came from the class as they watched Emily being reprimanded. The students began to see her as someone it was okay to mock. Back then, I wasn't any different from the others. I looked down on her for being scolded by Mr. Johnson and probably laughed along with the rest. Her family's poverty was evident in her daily life. She rarely took baths and had a slight odor. Her clothes were always worn out, giving an impression of neglect. That's my first memory of her, Emily Yates. Let's eat. My household consisted of just my mom, who worked late into the night. I was a latchkey kid, always eating dinner alone. There would be food ready on the table, which I'd heat up in the microwave. That night, I think it was my favorite stew. While I was secretly happy, I ate with a blank expression. After all, even if I said, "It's delicious," there was no one to respond back. Thank you for the meal. After stuffing the stew into my stomach, I took the dishes to the kitchen. I washed the plates and placed them on the drying rack, then returned to the living room. Then I turned on the TV and spread out my homework on the table. I spent time neither really watching the show nor making progress on my homework. Until my mom came home, this was my weekday routine in front of the TV. Mom, listen. Emily got scolded again today. After my mom came home, I would share the funny things that happened that day. I would talk about who I played with, my good test scores, and other significant events for a kid. Among these stories, I mentioned Emily. Emily is the girl in your class, right? My mom listened while folding laundry. She didn't pay for her lunch. That's not good. I repeated what Mr. Johnson had said, feeling proud. Everyone else pays their lunch money, but she doesn't. I continued to speak proudly. I didn't notice that my mom was starting to get angry. Kevin, do you find other people's struggles funny? Ha! I was taken aback by her sudden serious tone. She stopped folding the laundry and looked straight at me. But Mr. Johnson and everyone else say it's bad. Has Emily ever done anything mean to you? No, but... Then why do you say mean things to her? Because... Her stern voice made me falter. If I didn't give you lunch money, you couldn't pay either, right? Yeah. Emily's not to blame. She's not at fault. Okay. I'm sorry. When I apologized, my mom sighed gently. Do you know anything about Emily's situation? Not really. I tried to recall what Emily had told Mr. Johnson. She said her mom didn't give her the money. I see. And she also said she doesn't get to eat much and wants to eat at school. I understand. My mom seemed shocked and fell into deep thought. Then, in a serious voice, she made a suggestion to me. Kevin, you're going to apologize to Emily tomorrow, right? Why should I? You made fun of her, didn't you? Well, yeah, but. Then go apologize. It's not hard. All right. Good. My mom smiled warmly. And while you're at it, invite her to dinner. What? Why? I was shocked by her suggestion. Emily doesn't get to eat much, right? It would be nice. Well, I was hesitant about inviting a girl I hardly talked to over to my house. It was typical shyness for an elementary school kid. Kevin, don't be mean. All right. Good boy. When I accepted the suggestion, my mom smiled happily. I felt a bit embarrassed and silently went back to my room. The next day at school, I saw Emily at the place where we change into our indoor shoes. Before I even thought about it, I called out to her. So, come over to my house for dinner today. When I said this abruptly, Emily looked surprised and widened her eyes. Why? She tilted her head in confusion. Of course, she would. We had barely spoken to each other before. Just do it. My mom said so. Oh. With that, I ran off without waiting for her reply. I heard her confused voice behind me but didn't look back. The day I invited Emily over, I wandered after school. We walked the familiar route home in silence. Well, Emily was walking a little distance behind me, also almost silent. I had completely forgotten about dinner and was heading home alone. But Emily, who had been waiting by the entrance, reminded me by saying just dinner. So, we walked to my house without speaking a word. We're here. Thank you for having me. We arrived home, and I unlocked the door and let her in. Emily cautiously stepped inside. Do you want to take a bath? My mom said, if you want to take a bath, you can. I remembered what my mom had told me that morning. Can I really take a bath? Sure, why not? After thinking for a moment, Emily said something that I didn't quite understand. Well, I usually get scolded for using too much water. I don't know, but my mom gets mad if I don't take one every day. Really? Yeah. She's really strict about it. I see, thanks. Emily, usually expressionless, seemed to smile a little. I'll go get the bath ready. You can wait in the living room. All right. Hearing her voice, I dashed to the bathroom. I cleaned the tub and pressed the button to fill it automatically. It was a simple act, but I felt a little proud because it seemed like I was doing something for someone else. I sat alone in the living room and turned on the TV. I think a news program was on, but I couldn't focus on it at all. From the bathroom, I could hear the continuous sound of running water. Having a girl from my class in the same house, taking a bath, made me nervous even as a kid. Kevin, thank you. Oh, yeah. I was zoning out when Emily came out of the bath. She was wearing light blue pajamas and drying her long hair with a towel. Those pajamas were ones I had gotten but never wore because they were too cute. They were a bit big on Emily, but she looked very nice in them. What's wrong? Nothing. Emily used to wear ragged clothes and seemed a bit dirty. But now, fresh from the bath, she looked cleaner and prettier than any girl in our class. Do you have any foods you don't like? No, I like everything. I see. After making sure Emily was out of the bath, I took the food on the table to the kitchen. There were 2 portions prepared, so I reheated them in the microwave in batches. Not knowing what to say, I kept staring at the microwave timer. This is delicious. Emily's face lit up as she ate. Right? My mom's omelet is the best. I felt proud that she liked my mom's cooking. Do you like omelet? I like omelet and everything. But I don't like cardboard. Cardboard? I tilted my head, thinking she was a bit strange. But talking with her, I realized Emily was interesting. We chatted about all sorts of things and had a great dinner together. Since that dinner, Emily came over to my house for dinner every day. We didn't talk much at school for some reason, but at home, we talked like best friends. Actually, Emily always listened to me with great interest. She didn't have a TV or computer at home, so she wasn't familiar with current trends. Instead, she listened to my stories with shining eyes. Thanks for keeping Kevin company again today. My mom would say this to Emily when she came home. What are you talking about? I'm the one keeping her company. Such a spoiled kid. My mom would smile broadly. I enjoy it too. Oh, you're such a sweet girl. At first, Emily would go home shortly after dinner. But gradually, she started staying longer, talking to me and playing games. Eventually, she stayed until my mom came home, and my mom would drive her home. All right, Emily, let's get you home. Okay, Mom. Emily would stop playing the game and run to my mom. Feeling annoyed about being left out, I ended up saying something mean. She's my mom, so it's weird for you to call her mom that. Really? Emily uncertainly looked back at me. Hey, don't say mean things. It's not weird at all, Emily. Really? But maybe I felt like my mom was being taken away, and I sulked. That's how close Emily and my mom had become. There's no because. Emily is like a daughter to me now. With that, my mom patted Emily's head. Emily smiled happily and walked out of the house as usual. After a while, I heard the car engine start and drive away from the house. Well, maybe. Left alone, I continued playing the game Emily and I had started. Feeling a bit lonely, I realized how important Emily had become to me. Is it here? Since she started having dinner at my house, Emily had gradually become more cheerful. She talked more at school and even made some friends. But then, suddenly, she stopped coming to school. And of course, she stopped coming over for dinner. With many handouts from school piling up, I was tasked with delivering them to Emily. The first time I went to Emily's house, I found a rundown apartment. Trash was piled up in the hallway, creating a strange atmosphere. This is scary. Feeling uneasy, I went up to the second floor of the apartment. I found the sign for Emily's apartment, 201, and rang the doorbell. What do you want? After a while, a man who looked tough answered the door. He seemed to be in his early 20s and looked quite irritated. Emily was absent from school, so I brought her some handouts. Handouts? The man yawned and took the handouts from me. Yeah, I remember these from when I was in elementary school. But Jessica works during the day, so I don't know. Looking back, I realized that Jessica was probably Emily's mom. Oh. But at the time, I didn't understand and could only watch as the man went back inside. What should I do? Holding the handouts, I stood in the trash-filled hallway as the thick door closed behind him. Of course, I didn't have the courage to ring the bell again, so I eventually trudged back home. So, that's what happened. I told my mom what I saw when I delivered the handouts to Emily's house. That day, my mom was home preparing dinner since it was some company anniversary. My mom thoughtfully continued making dinner efficiently. I was, as usual, doing my homework while glancing at the TV. Hey, someone's at the door. Kevin, can you get it? Suddenly, the doorbell rang, indicating someone had come to visit. Following my mom's instructions, I went to the door and opened it. Emily? To my surprise, Emily was standing outside the door. She stood there silently, staring at the ground. What's wrong? I asked, but she didn't respond. Come on in. I gestured for her to enter, and she nodded without a word. Emily walked inside but stopped at the entrance. Not knowing what to do, I closed the door and watched her back. I'm hungry. After a long silence, Emily finally spoke. Eat as much as you want. My mom smiled warmly at her. Emily ate the food in front of her with intense focus. Mom didn't ask her any questions, and Emily didn't say anything. I was so amazed by Emily's appetite that I forgot to eat my own meal. Here, eat this. I pushed a plate towards Emily. Don't you like fried chicken? Emily hesitated but kept her eyes glued to the fried chicken. I do, but you should eat it. Thanks. Emily smiled shyly and started eating the fried chicken. Noticing my mom grinning at me, I looked away, embarrassed. As we enjoyed our dinner, the doorbell rang again. Sorry, Emily, can you come here for a moment? After answering the intercom, my mom quietly called Emily. Emily nodded yes and followed my mom to the front door. I could hear the voices of a man and a woman coming from the entrance. It was probably Emily's mother with the police. The adults talked loudly for a while, making me feel anxious. Eventually, I heard a woman's loud voice, and Emily returned to the living room. "Let's eat." She sat back at the table and started eating again. The voices from the entrance grew louder, and it seemed like people were restraining Emily's mother. "Are you okay?" Tears filled Emily's eyes as she stuffed her mouth with food. "It'll be all right." I didn't know what would be all right, but I took her hand. Emily stopped eating and slowly expressed her feeling. "I don't want to go home." Emily whispered. "Stay with us. Let's eat together every day." "Really?" "Yeah. Mom said you're like a daughter, and when we eat together, we're family." "Family? Am I not unwanted?" "Of course not." I wiped her mouth with a tissue. It felt like I had a sister, or rather a sister who needed care, truly feeling like we were a family. I didn't know what kind of exchange happened after that. All I knew was that Emily stopped coming to both our house and school, and later I heard she had transferred to another school. That's the memory I have of my strange classmate from 18 years ago. After that, I grew up without seeing her again, became an adult, and got a job at a large company. "Michael, I'd like to leave early today." I filled out a leave form and brought it to my boss, Michael. As usual, Michael made a disapproving face and clicked his tongue loudly. "Kevin, how do you think it looks for one person to leave early when everyone else is working hard?" "But I've gotten permission from HR." "Ha! Then maybe you should transfer to the HR department. We can't have slackers in our team." Michael leaned back in his chair and began a long lecture. "Michael, that's enough." "John." Our department head, John, interrupted Michael's tirade. "Kevin's mother is seriously ill and hospitalized. Visiting her every week is commendable. But, besides, Kevin makes up for it with overtime on other days." "There's no problem with that." "All right." Reluctantly, Michael accepted my leave form. "Thank you." I appreciated both Michael and John and quickly left the office. I went home to get my mom's change of clothes and then hurry to the hospital. Phew. While working that morning, I couldn't help but let out a big sigh. My mother had raised me alone, and I managed to get a job at a large company. However, the long years of strain took a toll, and she collapsed around the time I joined the company. She has been hospitalized ever since, mostly bedridden. She needs a major surgery, which is estimated to cost around $200,000. We don't have that kind of money, and she wasn't covered by decent health insurance. I was just paying the monthly hospital fees, visiting her without seeing any hope for improvement. "Hey, you look down." Michael noticed how depressed I seemed and spoke to me. "Sorry, I'll focus on my work." "No, that's not what I mean." Michael sat next to me and spoke gently. "John told me. Your mom's in a tough spot, isn't she?" "Yes. She's been hospitalized for a long time. I heard the surgery will cost a lot." "Yes. My salary isn't enough to cover it, and I can't find anywhere to borrow that kind of money." "You're such an idiot." "What?" Michael suddenly burst into laughter, catching me off guard. "What do you mean?" "The company has a loan system for employees. You should use it." "Really? There's something like that?" "Yeah. Hold on a second." Michael got up and brought back a few forms. "I don't know the details, but you can borrow up to tens of thousands of dollars with this." "Really? It's true. This should cover the surgery costs." "Why are you being so kind to me?" Michael usually had a tough demeanor. I thought he disliked me. "I'm hard on you because I have high expectations for you." Michael said this with a smile. "And go ahead and submit your leave form too. Give your mom the good news." "Thank you for everything." I had been struggling alone for so long, feeling overwhelming anxiety. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I quickly wiped them away. "Hey, don't cry. Just get those documents filled, and I'll handle the rest." "Thank you." I wiped my tears and filled the documents he had prepared. "Now, go on. Hand off your work to a colleague and get going." "Yes, thank you." I appreciated Michael and quickly left my desk. I asked a colleague who knew about my situation to take over my tasks and then left the office. "Mom, I can finally help you." I arrived at the hospital and went to my mom's room. Holding her hand, unsure if she was conscious, I poured out my emotions. Thinking about it, I realized I hadn't been able to repay her for anything. If the surgery went well and she recovered, I could finally thank her for raising me. A call? I saw that Michael was calling on my phone. I moved to an area with reception and returned the call. Hello, this is Kevin. I'm returning your call. Hey. The money should have been transferred to your account. Michael's voice sounded unusually cheerful over the phone. Thank you so much. I can't express how grateful I am. I wasn't sure about the exact amount, so I transferred about $500,000 to your account. $500,000. That's way too much. Yeah, that's a bit of an issue. Is it a problem? Not really, just withdraw the extra and bring it to me. Of course. I'll go to the bank and withdraw it as soon as possible. Great. Bring it to the office after work today. No problem. You're really reliable. I'll be working late, so call me when you're nearby. Understood. I'll go to the bank right away. The doctor said the surgery would cost about $200,000. I decided to return around $300,000 to Michael. Thank you so much. Even though he couldn't see it, I appreciated deeply while holding the phone. I truly couldn't thank Michael enough. I believed this would turn my life around. You're fired. And don't think that's the end of it. Be prepared. As my mom's surgery preparations progressed, I was working harder than ever. But suddenly, I was called in by my boss and told I was fired. When I asked why, they accused me of embezzlement. I was in shock and couldn't comprehend what was happening. Apparently, the $500,000 Michael lent me was actually the money from the company. They suspect I withdrew it for my mother's surgery and hid the rest somewhere. That's not true. Michael told me to borrow it. Don't be ridiculous. Do you have any proof? Whenever I tried to argue, Michael would shut me down completely. John and the others wouldn't listen, saying there's nothing they can do without evidence. Objectively, it looked like I had authorized the transfer of $500,000 into my account with my sign. Then, I withdrew $300,000 in cash, which is now unaccounted for. Of course, Michael should have that $300,000, but he likely hid it somewhere hard to find. In my panic, I couldn't defend myself properly and was thrown out of the company. What should I do? I sat on a bench in front of the company building, holding my head in despair. I had no money or no job. In fact, I not only had no money, but I also had a huge debt to repay. I was completely at a loss about how to go on. Is that you, Kevin? Suddenly, someone spoke to me. I looked up to see a beautiful woman around my age standing there. She was gripping her hand tightly, staring at the ground with a strange expression. The person who spoke to me introduced herself as Williams from the company. She wanted to understand the situation better and offered to drive me to the hospital. I don't know what to do anymore. I spoke to her as we walked down the hospital corridor. She had long hair and was very beautiful. She was the kind of person I had never encountered in my life. Her suit looked expensive, making me feel inferior. Glancing at my own clothes, I realized they were more tattered than I thought. The incident even reached the hospital, and the surgery procedures have been halted. She silently followed me, not saying a word. Despite her silence, I couldn't stop my stream of complaints. They'll probably take back the $200,000, making the surgery impossible. On top of that, continuing to pay for my mom's hospital stay would be challenging. I was deceived by Michael. I believed in someone's kindness, and this is what happened. It felt irreparable. I probably wouldn't be able to save my mom. We're here. We reached my mom's hospital room, and I opened the door. When the woman saw my mom lying in bed, she gasped. "Mom!" She whispered softly. The woman clenched her lips and trembled slightly. My mom has been like this, sleeping for years now. I couldn't lead a normal life because of the constant visits to mom and overtime work. It's pathetic. If I had worked harder, maybe she could have had the surgery. Right now, I was barely managing to pay for her hospital stay. I couldn't even afford proper clothes or meals for myself. I'm hungry. I muttered like a child. Kevin, let's go back to the office. Huh? She said this while still looking at my mother, her voice trembling. Her words, filled with an anger-like intensity, left me with no choice but to nod silently. Kevin! How could you come back? Back at the office, I found Michael and John waiting for me. Michael was visibly irritated, but John seemed willing to at least listen. Do you have any proof now that you're here? Well, no, I don't. I stammered, unable to produce any new evidence. I knew I had to do something, but I had grown accustomed to losing. Kevin claims he was deceived by Michael. Ms. Williams spoke up in my defense. That's baseless. You have no proof. Michael shouted, leaning aggressively toward her. If the police investigate properly, they should find evidence, like surveillance footage. No, not the police. Why not? It would disgrace the company. Imagine if people found out an employee embezzled money. Why are you, just an employee, making statements as if you represent the company? Ms. Williams retorted without backing down. Just an employee? Who are you anyway? Michael, unable to contain his frustration, demanded an answer from her. Then she began to speak slowly. Recently, everyone knows about the unfortunate incident involving President Anderson's only son, right? Yes, but what does that have to do with this? As she mentioned, the company had been in turmoil over succession issues. It was rumored that there was a significant problem about who would take over the company. And you're aware that a child from outside Mr. Williams, the chairman, marriage has been discovered? I've heard rumors. I remembered hearing such rumors. It was said that Mr. Williams had only recently learned about this child and doted on them despite their age difference. No way, are you? Michael seemed to realize something and widened his eyes in shock. He started trembling and glanced around nervously. Yes. I am Mr. Williams's daughter. She declared firmly. Michael and John exchanged glances, their faces turning pale. So, what is your relationship with Kevin? What kind of relationship? Asked by Michael, she began trembling with anger. Kevin is my only family. What? Her sudden revelation left me confused. But I started to recall a certain girl from 18 years ago. I've lived through so much hardship. It felt like the whole world was against me. Michael recoiled at her fury. But Kevin and his family were the only ones who were kind to me. They showed me that there are kind people in this world. She directed her immense anger at Michael. And to deceive and torment Kevin, who is the only kind person in this world, is something I can never forgive. That wasn't my intention. Don't think getting fired is the end of it. I'll make you suffer 100 times more, no matter what it takes. Well, he must have realized she was serious. Michael broke down, crying for help. Of course, she paid no heed and turned her attention to John. Emily? I called out her old name. She turned toward me and smiled shyly. I'm back, Kevin. Emily Yates, now recognized by Ms. Williams, probably goes by Emily Williams. I had no idea how much she had endured since we parted. But her shy smile was just like it used to be. Welcome back, Emily. Don't worry. Leave everything to me. As I teared up, Emily was suddenly in front of me. She wiped my tears with a handkerchief and held my hand, assuring me everything would be all right. Are you hungry? Emily asked, walking beside me. After that, Michael was fired and faced legal action from the company. Emily also arranged everything for my mom's surgery and hospitalization. What should we eat today? Fried chicken. Fried chicken, huh? Sounds good. We headed home together. I'm home. Emily opened the door first as we arrived home. Welcome back, Kevin and Emily. Entering the living room, my mom greeted us. Her surgery had gone well, and she was back to living a normal life. How are you feeling today, Mom? Emily asked, smiling as she ran up to her. Seeing your face makes me feel better already. Great. So, how about some fried chicken? Sounds good. I'd love some. They laughed together like a real mother and daughter. Now, we could truly live as a real family. Emily, let's start preparing dinner. Yeah, I'm starving,